Welcome to the State Bar of Texas podcast, your monthly source for conversations and curated content to improve your law practice. With your host, Rocky Dhir.
Hello and welcome to the State Bar of Texas podcast recorded from the annual meeting in Austin, Texas. This is Rocky Dhir, and I'm the host for today's show, which is being sponsored by LawPay. Trusted by more than 35,000 law firms to accept legal payments online, it's the only payment solution offered as a member benefit by the State Bar of Texas. Now, joining me now, I have Brent Turman and Elliot Mayén.
Thank you for having us, Rocky.
Welcome, guys. Great to have you. So before we start talking about, and I want to hold off on the title and the topic because this is just too much fun. But before we get started, tell us about what you do. So, Elliot, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's a good place to start because I just want to caveat here, I am not a lawyer.
Congratulations. This is great. Wow.
So I'm here in a media consulting capacity. I'm actually the lead producer at DHD Films, which is a production studio based out of Dallas, Texas. And there I produce, direct, and also offer marketing consulting services and brand management strategies.
Good plug. That was a great plug for all of our audience members. All right.
That's what I do.
And Brent, how about you?
Yeah, my name is Brent Turman. I'm a litigator in Dallas, Texas at the full-service firm of Bell Nunnally and Martin. I also practice entertainment law when I'm not in the courtroom. We have literary publishing, we have film, television, media production, music, just kind of all around there.
Very cool. So now let's talk for a second. I'm just going to pick a random topic out of the air. Kanye West.
So random.
I know. Where did I come up with that?
I don't know.
It's a coincidence.
It's not like you guys talked about that today.
For an hour.
Yeah, for an hour about what Kanye West can teach us about litigation. So first things first, are we talking about, Kanye could be a great litigator, or are we saying, Kanye's life has some lessons in there for those of us that litigate?
The latter, but wouldn't you love to see him in the courtroom?
I would actually love, what I would anticipate is that he would just interrupt opposing counsel in the middle of their closing argument and take over the stage.
He would let them finish.
Especially if opposing counsel is Taylor Swift.
Yeah, exactly,
right,
exactly.
Right?
You have to talk about that in the presentation.
Yeah, you have to talk about that anytime Kanye is mentioned. So let's talk about Kanye. What can we learn from this guy?
So much. We would take a lot of lessons. Before Kanye was successful, he didn't have a big target on his back. There weren't a lot of lawsuits against him. But we take lessons we can learn from his personal life, his attributes, the way he behaves when he's in the public eye.
His attributes? Okay. This ought to be interesting.
You can learn a lot from what he does and how those translate to really skills that litigators can use in their practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you give us a few of those? What are some of the skills and...
So I think one of the things that maybe surprises people when they come to the talk and listen to what we have to say is that everybody knows the Kanye that's really easy to hate, the Kanye these days. But you have to understand that it took a lot of work to get to where he was to be able to say the things that he can say, right? You have to get to a certain place in your life. So hard work is one of the things that we've picked up on. There's a lot of hard work in his early life.
He is talented, though. I mean, anybody who's really into his music will say that there's some genius there in his actual talent base.
And he'll tell you about it.
Well, yeah, sure. and maybe that's another thing litigators can learn. Just,
But Elliot can talk about the hard work with just getting his first album out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he would stay before work, after work. He was in a place where he had entered the game, but he was still at the bottom of the game, right?
And this is when he had entered the world of music.
Yeah, he was signed officially he was on a label, Rockefeller label. And so he was there, but they weren't really letting him do his music. They were making him do tracks, backing tracks, beats for other people because that's what he was good at. He wanted to rap, but they were like, no, that's not what you're here for. So he would stay late. And he would come in early, and he did it so much that he exhausted himself, and he was in a car wreck, famously. Right before he released his first album, wired his jaw shut, and then the track Through the Wire, right? So he rapped that through the wired jaw. So a lot of dedication, which,
like tenacity almost.
A lot of tenacity. I mean, and I know that, from knowing Brent in the legal world, there's a long hours here. So there's some similarities and crossovers and, the passion you have to have for work in order to get to a certain spot.
And we talk about some of the earlier cases I was on where it's a different business model than a lot of cases, but it's a contingency model. And you can really take advantage of that and, dive deep because at the end of the day, you can go down so many rabbit holes. You can know every exhibit front backwards. You can know everything. Doesn't matter what white shoe firm you're against. It doesn't matter if opposing counsel went to Harvard. No offense if anyone out there went to Harvard. It doesn't matter. If you know everything better than them, if you're the unofficial subject matter expert, you have a leg up and you can effectively represent your client.
What about trial techniques? Is there something that that Kanye can teach us about actually getting into the courtroom and delivering your message?
Not directly, but I mean, we talk about his strategy he used. There was one album, he just was fresh off tour with U2, and he saw how you can change the way you communicate. He structured songs where there was a gap for kind of a call and response, and these are songs you can play in an arena, and you can have fans, thousands and thousands of fans screaming it back. And so just thinking about how you communicate and strategy, and we talk about the difference if you're speaking to a judge or a jury. That's a very different audience, and there's a fine line you got to walk as far as making sure you can communicate effectively to a jury without talking down to them, but also keeping it simple enough where you're not speaking legalese and Latin and crossing your fingers hoping they'll follow you.
Getting the jury to kind of say stuff along with you as a lawyer, is that where we're going?
No call and response yet.
Yeah, no.
We can aspire.
We can hope.
Yeah.
We can push for a rules change, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things we covered that I think is maybe a little bit more on the controversial side, if you will, is strategically working to get a response out of people. Kanye's not dumb. I think sometimes he does the things that he does knowing that he's going to get a rise out of people. And I think Brent covers in part of the presentation how you can do that strategically in the courtroom and kind of throw your opponent by making them kind of get off kilter and maybe get in their feelings a little bit and lose their cool just by being strategic about the things you say or how you go about things.
And you can throw some bait out there and hope they take it, because at the end of the day, it's going to be good. We talked about an example where you're with a witness looking through documents. I got a big stack of documents standing 3 feet from the jury. We're looking at all these documents, talking about them. Offer them into evidence. Opposing counsel jumps up. Objection, Your Honor. These are admissible because of A, B, and C. May we approach? Get up there. At the end of the day, the judge does not let him in, and I didn't care. I mean, the goal was to have the jury think plaintiff's counsel is trying to hide something. They don't want me to see what's in those documents. So sometimes the reaction's more important than the substance.
Okay, so now this actually is kind of interesting, what the story you just told or the example you just gave, because we also hear a lot about civility in the courtroom and trying to make sure you play by the rules and and be very civil with the opposing party. So how do you thread that needle between trying to get a rise out of somebody and still working within the rules of professionalism?
Well, I must say, I wasn't trying to make them angry. I just wanted them to make, not a scene, but I wanted the jury see them trying to make sure evidence didn't get in. It wasn't necessarily an aggressive or anger thing. I mean, life's too short to always be upset at everybody. And, a partner at our firm kind of taught me, opposing counsel is not out to get you. They don't wake up trying to ruin your day or your night or your weekend. So it's just using the strategic tools you have to best represent your client.
And sometimes it's also about knowing how far you can push the envelope and then drawing back. And this is where we use Kanye as a negative example. Don't do what he does. He doesn't know how to pull his punches sometimes.
No.
And so.
Okay, so Kanye can teach us about litigation not only in terms of the do column, but also the don't column, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So Brent, this example you gave or the response that you gave, it seems to suggest that maybe what we learned from Kanye is how to be strategic in trying to elicit a response. But then Elliot, you're saying, don't take it too far.
Exactly.
As lawyers.
Yeah, you have to measure yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, last question. We could talk about Kanye all day. This is a very fascinating topic. But last question for now is, are there certain, if you will, traits that Kanye has just personally, aside from his antics, but say his traits, his presence, the way he communicates, that we as lawyers might want to take a second look at and learn from?
I think one of the things that I like to pick up on is that, a lot of the work that I do with clients is really about establishing their brand, whether it be their personal brand or the brand of an organization, and all of that has to be deliberate. So everything you do is telling a story. I like to tell people the way that you dress, the way that you enter a room, the way that your office looks, if your letterhead matches your business cards, all of that's telling a constructed story about who you are. And whether they know it or not, people will pick up on that. And I think Kanye, whether we think so or not, is very strategic about the way that he goes around crafting his personal image. And again, I'm not saying that anyone should necessarily aspire to that kind of image, but maybe to that kind of attention to detail and how one constructs a holistic brand around, again, themselves or their organization.
To exercise deliberation as opposed to just throwing stuff up on a wall.
Yeah, deliberate action is what I would say.
And I'd say it's important to find your voice. So we talk a lot about how Kanye came in with a very different sound. It sounds like kind of a pitched up chipmunk soul is what they branded it, using old samples from way back. But it's finding your own voice. It's not trying to be, in the hip hop game was very different when it came out. We've got people bragging about how many times they've been shot and all the crimes they've committed. And this Kanye worked at the Gap and wore pink polos, and he was proud of it. So he knew he was, and he was true to that. I know a lot of young lawyers try to be someone they're not. They try to beat their chest when they shouldn't. I mean, sometimes you get, more flies with honey than vinegar, and that can be a strategy you use too. Whenever you flip the switch later, it's going to throw people off. And you can also, if you're playing nice, you can get some nice information depositions. But it's just kind of borrowing what you see older attorneys and partners do, what you like, borrowing some of that, as long as it can work for you, and just learning to be true to yourself.
Authenticity sounds like. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our program. I want to thank both Brent and Elliot for joining us today. Thank you guys for being here. This was fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you
I
for
never
having us.
expected to talk about Kanye West on the State Bar of Texas podcast. This is fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Well, now, if our listeners have questions, they've got follow-up, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way? So, Elliot, let's start with you.
Yeah, so you can obviously visit the website of the company I currently work for, dhdfilms.com, or you can email me directly at elliot@dhdfilms.com, or find me on LinkedIn.
And you can find me on Bell Nunnally and Martin's website. It is Bell, like you ring the bell, and then Nunnally, N as in Nancy, U-N-N-A-L-L-Y. I'm at B Turman at bellnunnally.com, and then also you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
That is all the time we have for this episode of the State Bar of Texas podcast, brought to you by LawPay. Thank you again, LawPay. Also, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please rate and review us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app. I'm Rocky Dhir. Until next time, thank you for listening.
If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Go to TexasBar.com/podcasts, subscribe via Apple Podcasts and RSS. Find both the State Bar of Texas and Legal Talk Network on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Or download the free app from Legal Talk Network in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, the State Bar of Texas, Legal Talk Network, or their respective officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, or subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.